that more people get to know about Bharata first. Now, the inaugural Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, or SSLV, of the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, carrying the Earth Observation Satellite EOS-02 and a co-passenger student spacecraft AzaadiSAT, did not launch as planned on Sunday. The mission failed because the SSLV D1 placed the satellites in an elliptical orbit rather than a circular one, leaving them unusable. In this edition of the Discourse, we will analyze what went wrong with the mission. And joining me on the program today are two esteemed guests, Dr. G. Madhavan Nair, former chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization, and Dr. T.V. Venkateswaran, scientist and science commentator, Vigyan Prasar. Thank you so much to both my guests for joining me on this edition of Discourse. Dr. Nair, let me start the program with you first. How would you look at this mission, the SSLV launch failure? What are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, it has been a very disappointing moment when Dr. Somnath announced that the satellite signals were not being received. And certainly, we all expected that to go all right. That's the reason that an operational satellite was put on board. And also one of the prestigious AzaadiSAT 75 years of celebration, we have put a student satellite for the first time on board. But unfortunately, as we could see the flight progress, something went wrong towards the end of the mission. It has reached the designated altitude of 365 kilometers. And then it is supposed to have record velocity around 7.5 kilometers per second velocity to keep it in that orbit, in a circular orbit. But unfortunately, what happened was there was a reduction in the velocity, and the net result is these spacecrafts were put in an elliptical orbit with 365 as apogee and something like 75 kilometers minute. At 75 kilometers, the atmospheric interference and drag is very high, and soon it will lose its life, and it will not do the intended purpose. But one thing is we are all happy about was all the power plants, the 3 rocket motors which are required and being developed for the first time, they worked extremely well. They have given the required performance. That's why it has gone to the 365 kilometer altitude. But as also, I'm happy that ISRO was bold enough to talk about it as in the open. And within a few seconds of the event, Dr. Somnath came on the line and announced that we are not succeeded. And within maybe a few hours, he could at least put together the data and come out with the immediate finding and what went wrong with the mission. Apparently, it was a sensor failure which triggered a series of downstream processes, which has resulted in this tragic event. Being so, I think we need not be too much worried about it, because the main intention was to develop a new rocket system. And that too, it was conceived something like 2017 or so. I mean, within a short time, ISRO has come out with the new rocket system. And also they have attempted a host of new technologies. Even the position determining navigation system and all were new technology, and they were using for the first time. So when you do an adventurous program like this with all new devices, there could be problems, and this is not unusual. We ourselves have faced. I have faced in the SLV-3, the first launch of the small satellite, and then later in the PSLV, that too, a similar situation. All the rocket motors work, but due to some software glitch, it has not accomplished the mission of placing the satellite in the orbit. But we recovered from all those things. So that is the ISRO culture. They look at this problem squarely. They identify the problem and then try to work out solution, a permanent solution, which will work properly for the future mission. So it's going to be the same story as far as the SSLV is concerned. I'm sure within the next few months, this will be able to come back on rails with the new small launcher.
Dr. Nair, thank you so much for sharing that information with us. And, this culture that you're speaking about, you have been a very big part of that culture as well. And I have seen it firsthand because during the Mars orbital launch, I spent one whole month at ISRO. And I saw how the scientists worked, 24/7. They did not allow any failure or any glitch to come in the way. They took it head on. They faced the challenges head on and always have made us proud with the limited budget that ISRO has compared to several of the other things. The work that the scientists and gentlemen like you, which have put this kind of thing in place and put this in place, has really made ISRO a wonderful place. Thank you so very much for all your contributions. Dr. TVB, coming to you now. What really went wrong? And like Dr. Nair has already mentioned, that we should not look at this as a setback. Of course, it is something that we are not very happy about because we would have liked to see it succeed. But over the last few years, we've seen almost every mission of ISRO being so successful that the entire nation almost always expects every mission to be successful, that we can't take a failure at all from ISRO. So what went wrong?
Yeah, first, I think I need to share a nostalgic moment. See, in 1979, I was a school kid, and we were all very enthusiastically hoping that the SLV-3 will be launched. And of course, we all know that the first mission failed, and there were a lot of criticism. In fact, the media, both in India and outside, were very, very critical, saying that you have wasted 20 crore. 20 crore in 1979 is a very huge amount, right? I mean, you have put 20 crores in Bay of Bengal, that kind of. But ISRO pulled up, came up with launches subsequently. Here, I would like to share some data that I think will give us some perception, of the issues. If you look at the satellite vehicle that we are talking about, small satellite vehicle, the actual name is SSLV D1. The D actually stands for developmental stage. So it means it's not an operational rocket. See, when you build something very new, for example, even when you build a car, my brother was in a car company, so I know about it. So when you build a new model of a car, you assemble everything and then you test it, inside your factory and then on the road before you actually sell it. At that time, you do find quite a bit of issues when you put everything together and then make it operational. So if you look at it, actually in SSLV, the ISRO has planned for D1 and the next one is D2 and then next D3. So we should not be looking at it with great disappointment. That's one thing that I want to say. What went wrong from various details that are available? One can gather that there was a sensor, which of course is not a new sensor that's being used in PSLV, but that sensor failed. But the software, which is supposed to look at the logic, the logic is something like if then, if, for example, the rocket is tilting towards one side, then, switch on the thrusters and then make it to bend toward the other. You have to build in such kind of software. That software failed because the sensor failure was not properly recognized. There was a logic, let's say, freezing or something like that. And that's how the last stage did not work. They attained the altitude. The altitude that was planned, the payloads attained those altitudes, but they did not get the enough velocity so that it can remain in a circular orbit. The VTM shut itself in 0.1 second, whereas it should have actually burned for something like about 20 seconds to give the enough velocity. That's what we can see from the master control room data. If you look at the master control room data, you can see that very clearly.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for sharing that bit of information as well, TV. It's time now to take a couple of questions from our viewers as well, who have been very eagerly waiting to, put these questions out. We have them, represented on a graphic. So I'm going to play those questions out right now. And first question I'm going to take up with Dr. Nair. Dr. Nair, this is something that you touched upon in your opening remarks as well about how, the space sector has started opening up. So Shreyas is asking this question about how has opening up of space sector affected Indian advancements? What are its future? What are the future reforms that are necessary for accelerated growth?
Well, as you know, ISRO is the sole organization in India which has taken up the development of the space sector, right from the rockets to the satellites, applications, and so on. And a huge amount of funding is required. But at the same time, we have optimized the programs in such a way that everybody acknowledges that ISRO's programs are run on a shoestring budget. There's a credit to the entire program, what we are managing. And by this time, we have built up infrastructure which is really world class, whether it is a launch complex, whether it's a satellite building facility, or the test facility which is required for the rockets, the design capability for the rockets, inertial systems, and so on. All these competencies built up in-house, and there's a amount of capacity integration. So we had to prioritize our programs. In the past, our programs have concentrated on providing application solutions. That is, the communication, how we can make an impact to the geostationary satellites, then the Earth observation satellites for both civilian and defense applications, and then also the type of disaster warning system which is required, then telemedicine, tele-education, etc. So we have matured and come of age as far as the space technology is concerned. Now, what for next? The missing element is the human presence in the outer space. I think today, China, America, and Russia, they only have this capability. We wanted to achieve this, and the program has been launched a few years back, and soon we will be achieving that. With that, we'll be in par with respect to the other nations. But as far as the country's programs are concerned, there are two limitations. One is entire funding is from the government. So naturally, the government very critically looks at it, and then there are limitations in providing abundant resources for that. Second thing is the Indian industries, though last 2 years, the industrial sector has been thrown open for the private participation. The response is not as much as we would like to have. So unless there's a strong presence of the private industry in taking on the ISRO's technology and marketing it globally, we will not be able to catch up with the competition. That is where a lot of attention is needed. But as far as future technology is concerned, heavy lift launcher is very much in our agenda. Already some blueprints are there, but we have to put in place. For example, China is already taking 25 tons to orbit, and they have plans to take 100 tons to orbit. And US also has got 100 ton to orbit as a class. But we are at about the threshold, about 10 tons to orbit. So we had to catch up. So these areas require priority. Again, in the communication sector, rural connectivity through the digital system is very much essential. So like that, a lot of priorities are okay. And something like a 10-year profile has to be drawn up. And definitely we can be the vibrant and doing as good as what they have been doing in the past.
Absolutely. There is no doubt about that at all. We have complete faith in the scientists at ISRO, and we have faith in what the kind of work that they're doing. And I'm sure that we're going to see some great progress really as far as space technology and space frontiers in our country is concerned. TV, coming back to you now, let me take up another question and something that is related to what one of the Space Commission member, AS Kiran Kumar, has said. He said that the failure of India's newest rocket to put small satellites in orbit is not a setback, and the space agency will attempt another flight very soon. So something related to this, Ruchi, another viewer is asking us a question. Let me just take that question up as well so that we can see it on our screens. Ruchi is asking, how would SSLV reduce the dependence on other significant launch vehicles and very successful ones at it, and also cater to an emerging market for the launch of small satellites?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first point that you mentioned. If you look at the SpaceX, Elon Musk, SpaceX, which we all talk with a lot of reverence, the first 3 missions failed. Remember that. First 3 missions failed. Only after that, his rocket was able to test the success, right? So even in India, if you look at ASLV, the first two missions failed. PSLV, the first mission failed. Okay, so as I was pointing out, I mean, the first missions are usually developmental missions. If you look at even internationally, all space agencies, the failure rate in the first few missions are very high, right? If you look at ISRO, if you look at the data between 2000 and 2009, there are roughly around 1,060 launches, of which I think about 191 failed all over the world. That's about 18%. And if you look at ISRO, out of the 83 launch vehicle launches, there have been about 10 failures. That's about 11%. Okay, so ISRO is doing fairly well with regard to its launch vehicle. So development stage, this happens. Now coming to the question that Ruchi has asked, I think Dr. Madhavan Nair also pointed out that we need a spread. No, you need a spread. Today, there is an emerging market for microsatellite, nanosatellite. I mean, some of us might be very surprised to know that in 2013, I think so, that NASA launched 3 mobile phones. Mobile phones. Okay, mobile phones as satellites, just to test whether the off-the-shelf commercial mobile phone can do adequate work at the low Earth orbit, and it did. So now people are thinking of a lot of small satellites, microsatellites, that kind of mobile phone like satellites at the low Earth orbit for Earth observation. Okay, because you are very close, even with a good camera, you will be able to get a good resolution. Second, telecommunication. Telecommunication, it's very simple. I mean, see, when you are in a car and you are having your mobile, you are moving from one tower to another tower, right? When you are using a mobile phone. But instead of that, imagine you are sitting in one place, the towers are moving. So actually towers are in the sky and it's moving. So the towers move and then you get connected from one satellite to another satellite, your telecommunication device at the ground. So in remote places, if you want to provide internet where, connectivity through optical fiber, etc., are very difficult, these give opportunity. So that's how ISRO went into this SSLV. But at the same time, for a country like India, I think given that we are a huge population, a large country, we cannot at this point of time give up the huge satellites, satellites of 8 ton, 10 ton. We cannot give up at this point of time. The other countries, developed countries, may give up because their numbers are low, the geography is small, and things of that kind. But we cannot give up. So we need both small and the big. So that's how the spread of ISRO. If you look at ISRO, is also trying to develop a new launch vehicle called universal launch vehicle, ULV, which can take something like about 40,000 kilograms and so on and so forth, right? So this spread is needed for ISRO. I mean, it needed for ISRO because India needs it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely. When we say us, it is a collective. We all need it. ISRO needs it. If ISRO needs it, we as a country also will progress because there are a lot of spin-off technologies that come from what ISRO develops and moves on to several of the other sectors as well. Right. Time to get closing comments now from both my panelists with what next and where do we go from here? Dr. Nair, the floor is yours.
Well, one thing, immediately recovery from this setback is the most important element. And certainly, from whatever I understand, the glitch is not very big one. We have to fix it and make sufficient safeguards. In fact, if you look at the PSLV history, the first one was failed because of the software error. But subsequently, all the missions, the software worked perfectly. We have taken similar action is required necessary. Now, the future development about the manned mission, I think that development is going on parallelly in the next couple of years. We will see our astronauts flying around the Earth. And perhaps it is a time to chalk out our programs for planetary exploration and so on. And maybe we have to think much bigger than what we are doing. Though we are meeting the immediate requirements, what needs to be done for 10 years from now should be in focus.
Absolutely. And Dr. TV, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at two aspects. One is space science aspects. I mean, the third mission of the SSLV is supposed to carry a X-ray space telescope. I mean, we would be one of the very few countries who would be having such a space telescope. And then it will be a complement to the international assets which are there. The second is mission Aditya to study sun, which again is going to be a very important one from space science point of view. And then one is also looking at the development of universal launch vehicle, because if you want to put human beings into space, if you want a space station and so on, you will require such a vehicle to take the assets to space. So these are all something that one is eagerly waiting for future from ISRO.
Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Much appreciate Dr. Nair and Dr. Venkateswaran for joining me on the program and sharing your expert views on this very subject. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's it on this edition of the Discourse. See you all again next time.